Welcome back to Loose Change. I'm Jim Evans, and normally to this point we've focused on people involved locally in sports, but we're going to extend beyond that to entertainment. And it is my pleasure to have with me a guy that I've worked with previously, and I'm privileged, again, to call my friend, and one of the area's top musicians locally, probably beyond. Jere B, the driving force behind the band SounDoctrine. Jere, thanks so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been too long that we've
it's been a
had
decade
a chance to
actually.
get together here. But well, first off, for those who may not be familiar with you, talk about how and when you got involved in music and how your musical life has evolved.
Wow. Well, I've been involved with music all of my life.
Right.
I mean, my mom would tell me stories of me beating on the table or a chair or whatever, just having rhythm from as long as I can remember. But, going the traditional route of high school, being in the marching band and jazz band and whatnot, and wanting to pursue it, I became a father at 17. So I had to stop my sort of quote unquote dream, to get a job.
Well,
that's what my grandparents said.
That happens to people.
Absolutely. But, in pursuing that, getting married and working at WKBN, a very interesting thing happened because I was writing music after I'd get home from work. But as all of us know, September 11th, that fateful day came, and one particular thought came to me concerning my life and just the purpose and whether this music was going to be a hobby or was it going to be something that I pursued. So, I mean, everybody remembers that day. Everybody remembers,
sure.
I was actually working, doing the Ryan show. Remember
right.
Dan Ryan?
Yeah, sure
on that morning. And getting home, I had a very good conversation with my wife just about life and purpose and, what are we doing? I got all of this equipment and this is just a hobby and I wanted to pursue it. Well, you got to have a wife who really believes in you to step out on faith, and that's what we did. And we began talking to some of the engineers there at KBN. There was one gentleman, Rick Wilmich, if you can remember him. Mm-hmm. We went to his studio and we began recording what was called the first SounDoctrine project. It was called Perseverance. And just getting with local musicians from the city of Youngstown and abroad, some vocalists, and we went in and we recorded that project. But here's what Rick asked me. He says, okay, we got the recording done. Now what are you going to do with it? That was an interesting question because I wasn't thinking band. I wasn't thinking traveling or touring or anything. It was just, I got to record this CD. And so once that was done, we began to put great musicians together, people like Cliff Barnes, Jamie Harrod, Feel the Beat on bass. And we did the first, what was called the Ohio Gospel Music Association up at the Holiday Inn Metroplex in Liberty, Ohio. Yeah. That was January 12th, 2002, our very first gig. You know who Brad Marshall is?
Yes.
Brad Marshall came to the gig and said, look, we got this thing going on at the Cellar in Struthers with Bobby Blue Bland. And why don't you guys think that you think you can open for them? We opened for Bobby Blue Bland the very next weekend, and boom. I mean, it just took off. We didn't know what we were doing then. It was just scrambling and making it up as we went along. And so very grateful for all of the opportunities that we've had since that point.
You do the drums, of course.
On stage.
Yeah. For those who don't know, tell us about SounDoctrine, your sound and what you do and the guys involved.
Well, we call SounDoctrine original alternative funk jazz fusion. It's a music that's really based in jazz and funk, but we can go anywhere. We love all kinds of eclectic styles. I mean, anything from Chick Corea to Jean-Luc Ponty to Cameo or the Ohio Players. I mean, everything gets thrown in and we make this big, huge stew out of it. Now, we've always said from day one, Jim, that SounDoctrine is less of a band and more of a movement. I've had the opportunity to work with some incredible musicians because it's not just John, Ringo, George, and Paul. When you think of SounDoctrine, and that's why even on our album covers, we don't generally put pictures of who the personnel are because it's always evolving.
Okay.
It's whatever it is for the moment. I'll give you an example. Quincy Jones, when he produces his albums, he'll have 30 musicians on there, 27 different vocalists. And SounDoctrine kind of follows the same suit because we're after a particular sound. And those musicians may not give you that sound that you're looking for. So as a producer, I'm always listening and trying to hone in on who is that vocalist, who is that musician who can give me that it. That may not be if you're, boxed into these 5 or 6 different musicians, that you can get it. So the stage show is the same way. You never know who's going to be on the Sound Doctrine show. You got some mainstays. You got this guy called Jere B, who's generally there.
Well, as he should be.
Yeah, generally he shows up.
That's probably pretty good idea.
Absolutely. But, you know, the bass players that we've worked with, Feel the Beat, Nate Barnes has traveled with us often, Chris Rhodes. We have a whole nother unit that we travel with when we do Washington, D.C., when we do Delaware, when we do Baltimore. That's a whole nother Sound Doctrine set. But here around the Ohio area, you may find Keith McKelly on saxophone. Right now we're working with a young dude from YSU's Dana School of Music. Excellent musician.
Yeah.
His name is Mitch Lawrence. Frank Walton on keyboards. Dylan Waters on bass. So, you know, we have a unit that just, there's an ebb and flow